Hey guys, my name is Lauren. If you're new to my channel, welcome, and if you're returning here, welcome back. I'm making a video on the take of what it's like to live in Australia as an American from a Texan's point of view, and I hope to offend no Australians in this video, simply enlighten a bunch of foreigners. So I didn't think I would make this video, but I've gotten a lot of questions from family and friends about what it's like to live here in Australia, and just a lot of questions about Australia in general. So I thought it would be interesting to make a video answering all you guys' questions. But first, a little bit of context about me. My name is Lauren. I grew up in Houston, Texas, which is in the southern part of Texas, near Mexico, where it's really warm. And I have been in Australia since technically October of 2016, living, but the first time I came here was in April of 2016 for a month. And I also have lived in New Zealand for 6 months in Christchurch, which is in the Southern Island. And I came here because I met in 2015 who is husband now, Justin, while I was traveling in China, and he's Australian from Melbourne. And since I've been here, I've gotten to travel to a lot of different places around Australia, including the Great Barrier Reef, Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, along the East Coast, and other southern parts of Australia near Melbourne, like Great Ocean Road, the Grampians. And I still haven't gone to Uluru or Cairns yet, but I look forward to going to those places. So I guess the first thing I wanted to talk about is the weather. We moved to Brisbane in March of this year, and prior to that we were living in Melbourne. And Melbourne is in Victoria, which is the southernmost state in Australia, which has an oceanic climate. It's close to Antarctica, and it's pretty much cold all year long. And opposite to America, where the further north you go, the colder it gets, and the further south you go, the hotter it gets, Australia is obviously south of the equator, so the further south you go, the colder, and the further north you go, the warmer. So that's why we moved here to Brisbane, because it's similar to Texas. It has a tropical climate pretty much 7 to 12 months out of the year. However, I will say we just came out of the first winter here that we've had, and it was a really cold winter, especially at night. So if you're looking to come to Australia for warmer weather, you'll want to live either in Sydney or more north of Sydney, because even Sydney can get cold. Brisbane and Melbourne are about a little over 1,000 miles apart from each other, and Melbourne's known for having 4 seasons in one day, and it's pretty much cold all year long. Whereas here, if you're a beach person like me, we're within hours, if not like an hour, to the beach, and you can pretty much go to the beach all year long. Also, the sun here in Australia is super intense. We get some of the highest UV rays on the planet, and I know that the state that we live in, Queensland, is the state on the planet with the highest UV rays in the world. So people are super sun safe here, like starting in primary and kindy. The kids wear wide brim hats, apply sunscreen at least 3 times a day, and that's carried on through their life, because skin care is really important, as cancer of the skin is really prevalent here. And then even in high school, some schools make the kids continue to wear the hats and the sunscreen. So it's a very, very big thing here. Another thing to cover, that's something different between America and Australia, is I feel that Australia has a large elderly population versus America. And also, I think America, I feel like, has more diversity with more Hispanic, African American, and people of other ethnicities, whereas Australia, unless you're in Sydney or Melbourne, that gets a lot of immigrants, and people from around the world. Anywhere else you go, it's going to be around 92% Caucasian, 6% Asian, and maybe 1% of other ethnicities. However, racism here compared to America is way, way worse, and other countries as well. I feel like Australians, the majority of people, are pretty extremely tolerant and are pretty chill, especially the older generation. Another thing to speak about would be the drinking here. It is a big part of the culture in Australia here to drink, and that's not any secret. If you go anywhere, you'll hear that, you know, Australians love to party. Even like holidays, like we're in Texas where we wouldn't have any alcohol, like Christmas, you will have alcohol here, and it's kind of because, you know, it's summertime here and you just want to cool off with like a cold beer. So yeah, drinking, there's a lot, I feel like a lot more of it here. And in America, the drinking age is 21, whereas the drinking age here is only 18. And people go for what they call sessions, which is just 1 or 2 drinks with friends, or I've even heard of bindies, which is where people go and club and party and drink for days and days and days. So that's something to think about. Also, if you're going to be going to a nightclub, not so much for ladies, we can kind of wear anything we want, but for men, you need to call ahead or look ahead online to make sure that you're going to meet the dress code requirements of the club you're going to, because they absolutely won't let you in if you're not properly dressed or if you look a little bit intoxicated. Another thing is, if you leave a club after 2 a.m. here, you cannot get back in. They stop serving alcohol after 12, and like literally a shot is around $6, and then if you go to a local grocery store just to get a pack of local brewed beer, it's going to cost you for like a 6-pack around $20. So alcohol is extremely expensive here in Australia. It's best to like pre-game have some drinks at home, only go out for a couple of drinks as they are so expensive. And if you're just coming here on holiday, I highly advise you bring your own, where you can buy it a lot cheaper and just bring it in your check-on bag. Not your carry-on, obviously. They'll take it from you, but yeah, check it into your check-on bag so that you don't have to pay the outlandish prices here for alcohol. But another thing would be driving. So if you're coming here and you already have a license from another country, definitely bring it, because you can just go down to the DPS whenever you get here, exchange your license for an Australian license, and start driving right then and there. And whereas if you don't do that, then you have to go through your learners, and it could take a couple of years. And over here, the driving age, the earliest you can have an open license is 20 years old, which is different than America, where you can get your open license at 16 and you have your learners at 15. Here, you have to have your learners for a year, and then you go for a practical driving and written, and then they put you on what's called green peas for 2 years, which is like provisional license. And so you have to stay on that until you're like 20. So even if you start at the very earliest possible, the soonest you'll have your open license in Australia is 20. So yeah, that's just something that is a little bit different versus living in America. Another thing to cover would be accents and unique words that Australians use. Just like in America, where we have vastly different accents between the states, north and south. We use different phrases. The same is true with Australia. The difference between the accents of Melburnians and people that live here in Brisbane is vastly different, whereas I think, in my opinion, the people in Melbourne sound more like British people, and the people more up here sound like Steve Irwin. But again, that's just me. Food. So We have 3 or 4 main grocery stores here that would be considered only a medium-sized grocery store in America. We have Aldi, IGA, Kohl's, and Big W, and they're definitely not as large as, like, you know, a Walmart or an H-E-B in America that are like the larger supermarkets. They more only have like 10 to 20 aisles of stuff, and if you're looking to buy like American foods, you're gonna have a really hard time finding anything unless you go to an international specialty store and pay premium prices for it. But if you're looking for just nice fruits and vegetables, meats, fresh cheeses, breads, nuts, they are still highly expensive here in Australia, but they are very nice. And if you go to the, whenever you first start grocery shopping here, you'll notice that they even call different fruits and vegetables and herbs different names. Like they call a cantaloupe a rock melon, and coriander, a chili is a jalapeno, a bell pepper is a capsicum. So yeah, they just have different names. And the whole thing about throwing a shrimp on a Barbie is totally false. Australians don't even really have shrimp here. They eat prawn, and so yeah, I don't know where the saying throw a shrimp on the Barbie came from, but it's just not true. Another good topic that I get asked about a lot is making friends here. Is it easy to make friends? Yes and no. I feel like in the larger cities, and I've heard especially in Goldie, it's a lot easier to make friends there because people are there to discover themselves. Most people aren't from there. They've just moved there, aren't necessarily staying there for a long time, maybe a few years, and are all looking to make friends. So that's, if you want to come to Australia to make friends, Goldie, Melbourne, Sydney would be the places to go. Not really so much outside of the larger cities or smaller towns where people already know each other and have an established group of friends. So yeah, whenever I was in Melbourne, I had a few friends, whereas here we live in a little bit smaller town and we have a nice church community, but it's a little bit harder to make friends. Going to the doctor here is way different because we don't have just only privatized medicine, we have privatized and socialized medicine. So if you're a resident or if you're a citizen, then the government covers your health care. So you can go to the doctor 6 days a week and walk in for free, pay nothing, get your prescriptions for free. If you want to see a specialist, you usually have to pay about 20% of whatever the cost of seeing a specialist is, and then the government reimburses the remainder of the 80. And the wait time's really not that long. It's about 3 to 4 weeks, which I understand if you're like really wanting to see a doctor about an emergency or something, then that could be a long time, but really that's not that bad. If you want to come here and work, it's a really good place to work because minimum wage here is around $21 an hour. So even if you're don't say have a degree or something, you could still come here and not struggle to survive because you'd be making $21 an hour. However, if you do have a degree and you're looking for a job, it's a bit harder to just break into the industry because a lot of employers want to see that you've had experience in Australia, and if you haven't, then they're less likely to give you an opportunity, I've found. So maybe it might even just be easier just to get a job that's just a temporary job if you come here. If you're wanting to buy or rent Definitely Australia is not a great place to buy. It's extremely expensive. Most people live within the 4 largest cities, and houses start at around 500 in the suburbs to $1 million in the city. So you really don't get a lot for your money, and I would highly advise, just if you come here, just rent, basically. So I guess that covers the majority of the standard questions that I've been asked. If you can think of another question, just pop it in the comments below, or you can find me on Instagram at my handle Lauren Michelle with 1 L Chapman. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you.